So I've been replaying the Assassin's Creed games from the beginning, and up next was Assassin's Creed Freedom Cry. I'm just going to say to begin, I love this game. But before we get into the pros and cons and more of my thoughts on the game, there will be spoilers in this video, potentially. I always like to be sure, so if you haven't played it, right now, go check it out. It's a phenomenal game that needs more attention and more eyes on the product. But with that out of the way, let's get to the pros and cons. Since it's short, let's go ahead and start with the cons. It's Black Flag, but much, much shorter. That is the biggest con that this game has. If you just focus on the main story, you can probably beat it in about 4 hours. There's a little bit of exploration still, so if you're a big fan of Black Flag, you can still go pirating and ship combat. But it is a very short, to the point game. That is probably the only con, is the length, which for some people that's not a con, some people it is a con. So that's really all I have to say negative about this game. So let's move on to the positives. Alright, so for the pros, we have Adewale was a character that really stood out in Black Flag and is now a Master Assassin in Freedom Cry. I'm going to just say it here, I've said it before, Adewale is my third favorite assassin in the entire franchise. I think he's an extremely compelling character, and as I said, he was a shining gem in Black Flag. He made his purpose known, and every time he was on screen, it was exciting. So seeing that character get its own standalone game, I think was such a joy, and I'm so glad that we got it. When it comes to the combat, Adewale is a very physically strong combatant, so some of the best executions in the franchise are in this game. It really helps to show Adewale's strength and his pure ruthlessness. He does not play around. Adewale is about in his early 40s in this game, so, he was that quartermaster in Black Flag. It's been a while. Now he's a master assassin, so he has learned a lot in that time, and we get to see that skill and ruthlessness in his executions when it comes to the combat. As you see, the story is great. Again, it is very short and sweet when it comes to the length of it, but it is very interesting to have a character like Adewale, who in my opinion is one of the most unique characters in this franchise, at least when it comes to main characters in Assassin's Creed. And seeing his journey from where we had saw him in Black Flag to where he is now, it's actually at times beautiful and tragically sad, but I think it's a story that needed to be told. To springboard off that point, seeing Adewale go from being shipwrecked to helping the Maroon Rebellion dismantle the brutal slave trade while also crippling Templar operations, that is such a phenomenal concept. They do a really good job of, giving you those mechanics of Black Flag that we all enjoyed, like the naval combat. But in that game, you were plundering for treasure and, repairing your ship and stuff. This game, it's very different. So yeah, you're still going to be taking out other, ships to, upgrade and repair your ship. But you're not necessarily doing it for the money. You're there to save slaves from there's a ton of slave ships that you can take and free. So there's that, almost humanity behind it that kind of adds to the uniqueness of this game. Now this next part, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail and explain this particular mission, memory, episode, whatever you want to call it. So again, if you don't want spoilers, this is your second spoiler warning, go play the game and come back. But Memory 8 was extremely harrowing, forcing not just Adewale, but the player to really grasp the tragedy happening in that time. So, the big thing about Adewale is he's so focused on the Assassin Order, sometimes to the point where he's so idealistic. So it's not always a bad thing, but being super idealistic, he cannot see some of the consequences. For example, freeing slaves is admittedly great, but what happens to the ones that didn't get away? The masters are basically going to, or the overseers are going to punish them more. This is another reason why I think this game is way more impactful and way more important, probably in all of the Assassin's Creed games. But in Memory 8, you go to stop a slave ship. You've done it before, but this time Adewale sees the real ruthlessness on these overseers because they start firing on their own slave ship. So you have to basically stop it, get on the ship, and you're trying to free all of these slaves in the hold, and they're all chained up. And Adewale's trying to beat the chains and fix and basically break them, and free as many as he can. But it's the moment on his face when he realized he can't save everyone, and it does have a deep change for him. And I think that is genuinely possibly the most harrowing mission in Assassin's Creed. I'm sure there are more, but from my memory, it is one of the most brutal when it comes to moments in Assassin's Creed. Overall, if you're a fan of Adewale from Black Flag, or if you're a fan of Black Flag, I still highly recommend you checking it out. Being a very short game, it's not going to take up a whole lot of your time. But for me, Adewale is, again, my third favorite assassin in this entire franchise. I think his story is so important and so pivotal to see what the times in the 18th century, I believe, was like, and seeing Adewale dismantle the rampant slave trade while also continuing his assassin duties, I think is extremely important and genuinely phenomenal. The combat's great, the story's great. If you haven't played Assassin's Creed Freedom Cry, I would give one of my biggest recommendations. Definitely check it out. I'm not sure where this is going to fall on my ranking, probably towards the upper half. But let me know if you played Assassin's Creed Freedom Cry. If you haven't, again, I highly recommend it. But if you have, let me know what you think in the comments.